Hello everyone, I'm Jack Kramer, and this is going to be fun for me because I know I'm talking to tennis players. This instructional series brings you personal lessons from the world's outstanding players on how best to hit the tennis ball in every conceivable way. Inside information on how to play the game to the best of your ability from the best in the business. All at your fingertips to study and enjoy. Each instructor presents his subject to you exactly as if he were giving you a private lesson. You don't have to buy everything he tells you, but remember, it's what he firmly believes and what he teaches his own pupils. You'll learn a great deal about playing the game of tennis and have a lot of fun doing it. Good luck. You know, there's a lot of important things you got to have to be a good tennis player. But one of the most important, in my opinion, is to have a good grip. And the reason I say that is through the years, I've seen all the good players who have good sound strokes come up with a good grip as well. Number one, we go to the Western grip. And the Western grip was named because back in the old days in tennis, the balls used to bounce very, very high, particularly on the concrete courts out in California. So people developed this kind of a grip to handle high balls. And the hand was directly under the handle of the racket. And it is good for high balls. But if you move to a situation where you have to hit low balls as well, really this grip doesn't work. You also have a problem with the backhand. Moving around to what we think is the more conventional way to hold the racket. A lot of good players do it, not necessarily all of them. But we call it the shake hands grip, or hitting the ball with the palm of your hand. This is the Eastern grip. You simply slide your hand down to where it's comfortable on the handle. And the key thing to remember is the top of the handle has two bevels. The bevel on the right side forms the V between the index and the thumb finger. This is a very fine grip, and it's very, very good for low balls or high balls. You can do anything with that particular grip. Moving over on top a little further, we come to the Continental grip. And the Continental grip was developed by the English because their game was predominantly played on grass, and they found that hitting low balls, because on grass they're skiddy and low, that a little bit of a flick of the wrist using this kind of a grip was very, very successful for them. The one good thing about the Continental grip is it's identified by the V switching from the Eastern side on the top right half of the handle to the left bevel. The V is formed by the thumb and the forefinger over here. I was saying one great thing about the Continental grip is that it is practically the same grip that you'd use for a backhand. And so this is the grip that if you're going to be a single grip player, using the same grip for the forehand and the backhand, you should use this kind of a grip. It's a good one. And so far we've been talking about the various grips for the forehand, but there is a change necessary for you to produce a good backhand, unless, however, you are that Continental grip player where the forehand and the backhand can practically be the same grip. The reason it's necessary from the Eastern forehand or the Western forehand to make a grip change is to get some help, mainly from your thumb. I'm going to demonstrate something that'll show you what I mean. If you're in an Eastern forehand grip, which is like this, and you tried to hit the backhand, you would see that there's very, very little help, no thrust at all, because the wrist is broken, it's limp. And I'd like to suggest something that if you turn this over, you turn it into a judo cut. So simply turn that knuckle of the forefinger away from this side of the racket to this side, which forms the V. Immediately you get some extra help from the thumb on the back side. Now you don't have to use the thumb the way I'm demonstrating here, because it can get help this way, meaning you have it overlapped, and a lot of players do that. A lot of good players are a little further around here. They tend to sort of push the ball. But somewhere in between there, try to get some help from that thumb. It's very valuable for your backhand. Now, through the years, my playing career, I found out that the Eastern grip, where I was hitting the ball with the forehand like this and the backhand over here, it worked great for me. And I'm not saying that you should use it. I'm saying that get out there and try, improvise. Somewhere in between this Western and the Continental and the Eastern in between, there's a grip for you. To hit any good shot in tennis with control and power, you've got to have fundamentals and basics. To help you with the basics, why don't we go to the pros go to, Dennis Ralston.
I've had the good fortune to work with novice players and also some of the top pros. And interestingly enough, the problems that the top pros have are similar to the problems the beginners have. That's generally that they're not doing the basics correctly. Let's begin with the ready position because that's where everything starts from. The ready position that most club players have are some ready positions that you would never believe. I've seen a lot of club players with the racket way up in front of their head and eyes, and they really can't see the ball, but they think that looks good. Or they'll be down here with the racket and their nose to the bottom of the court. From that position, they're also in problems because their weight's forward, their balance is going to be in trouble. So what I stress when I teach my students is to have a nice, relaxed, ready position where the racket level at the waist, the left hand or the free hand grabbing the racket slightly and comfortably and having a nice, relaxed stance. Notice that my elbows are relaxed, my shoulders are relaxed. My weight is on the balls of my feet. I'm ready to go. I'm not standing on my tiptoes, but I'm nice and relaxed in an easy movement position. From that position, I can go either to the backhand side comfortably or to the forehand side comfortably. From there, we go into the early preparation. It's really important that you get the racket back quickly and early and smoothly to ensure a chance at hitting the ball correctly. Many players wait until the ball bounces before they start to take the racket back. The good players are the ones that the racket's back when the ball bounces. That's why the pros look effortless when they're hitting the ball. They're in position when the ball bounces. They're not getting into position when the ball bounces. Now, that leads us into the next point, which is to have good balance when you hit the ball. Many players are under the theory that they've got to lean into the ball before they hit it. They've got to have their weight moving forward before they hit it, either on the forehand or on the backhand, that your weight should be forward. That really throws your balance off, because if you're leaning forward before you hit the ball, it's all going to be with the arm. So the proper balance is that the racket and hand are back, your weight is on your back foot. As you go to hit the ball, the racket and the hand leads you into the shot. Your weight moves as you hit the ball, not before. Another key thing in forehand and backhand and all fundamental parts of the game is that the head basically should stay very still. You should really track the ball with your eyes, keeping your head movement down to a minimum. Use your side vision, peripheral vision. The reason for this is that if you move your head and take your head down to see the ball here, you're really taking your eye off the ball. So then when you hit the ball again, you're going to try and pick it up again. If you keep your head still and move your eyes, you're going to be able to see the whole court, be able to get an idea of the whole picture of what's happening. Now, that moves us into probably one of the most important things that most players don't do, and that is they don't let the racket do the work for them. Rackets are designed to help you, and many players, when they find that they let the racket do the work, it's a much easier game. There's a nice movement in that when you hit the ball, the wrist moves the racket head through the shot. Many players never move the racket head through the ball. Their hand leads everything through. They finish high and there's nothing behind the ball. On the forehand again, the wrist and the hand lead the racket head through. Putting it all together, you need to have a good ready position. You need to get the racket back before the ball bounces. You want to keep that head still, and you need good balance, and you need to let the racket head do the work.
I've also noticed that good players don't seem to have a special shot because the ball bounces low or high or fast or slow. What they try to do is get the same swing, to get a groove, because it's much easier to do it that way. And how they do it is always try to collect the ball through their waist. And this means if the ball is going to bounce low, you bend your knees, use them like an elevator to collect it through your waist. If the ball is going to come high and bounce high, you can move back a little bit, but once again, collect it through your waist. By hitting the ball through your waist as many times as you can, you get a groove. You don't have to think too much. You produce more control, and you usually get more power. Because you seem to hit more forehands than the other ground stroke in tennis, and if you play offensive tennis, you've got to have a good one. Let's go to Dick Stockton, who not only hits a good forehand, but can talk about it.
First thing we want to consider is how do we hold the racket? What is the grip? And briefly, I would say that there's no one grip that everyone should use. But the most comfortable grip, and if you're a beginner, the one you probably would want to use when you first start, is called the Eastern grip, or basically a shake hands grip, where you bring your hand down the racket and literally just shake hands with it, as if that were someone else's hand. It's a very comfortable, relaxed position. You always want to be relaxed on every stroke you hit. But it's hard to say that that's the grip you should use. So if you go watch a professional tournament and you watch 12 different players, you'll see 12 different grips, varying from the Eastern to a continental in between, or to a Western, where they literally are around the racket in order to hit topspin. So it basically, the key word is comfort. Whatever is most comfortable for you as an individual is the best way to hold the racket. There are certain key elements to the forehand, and basically they are: 1, preparation; 2, transfer of weight from the back foot to the front foot; 3, where you want to meet the ball; and 4, the follow through. Now, how do we go from step to step? Well, basically, if you're in your ready position and your knees are slightly flexed at all times so that you can move right or left, and we're facing the net ready for the ball, and we see the ball come into the forehand, the backswing should start so you have plenty of time to bring the racket forward. A common problem is that people don't get the racket back soon enough. They wait for the ball to hit on their side of the court, and then everything is one quick motion, and they don't really have the time to set up. The most important thing is get the racket back early. There's several ways to bring the racket back. 1 is straight back, which saves a little bit of time. When I was 6 years old and learning to play tennis, I learned what we called the capital C, which is a little circular motion, like you're making a C with your racket. Now, obviously, that takes more time to get the racket from here to here than if you take it straight to here. So you have to prepare even earlier. But preparation is the key word. Now, if we can get the racket back and we turn the shoulders, very important to always try to be perpendicular to the net. Sometimes it's obviously impossible to, if you're hitting the ball on the run, to get the feet turned, but the important thing is to always turn the shoulders. And the difficult thing on the forehand is that you have to tell yourself to turn the shoulders. Whereas on the backhand, to take your racket back, you have to turn the shoulders. Everything is done automatically. That's why the backhand is a more natural stroke. The forehand is an unnatural stroke because you're coming across your body in an unnatural way. So if we got to tell ourselves to turn the shoulders, and you got to keep them turned as you swing. It's very natural. This is the common fault. It's very natural. As you swing, pull your body, make everything go this way. But that's incorrect, and that's how you're going to lose control of the shot. I'm going to try to keep the shoulders turned until the stroke is finished. Like in golf, you keep your head down, everything stays. It's the same in tennis. Tennis, golf, and baseball are all very similar. The head stays still, the body stays turned. And the most important thing in all 3 of these sports is proper transfer of the weight from the back foot to the front foot. And the forward motion starts as the ball is coming across to your side of the net, and as the ball hits, your racket should be coming forward. Now, the common fault with transfer of the weight is that most people panic. They get a little bit too excited about what they're doing, and they get the racket back, and they step forward, and then they swing. Basically, all the pace you want should come from your weight, not from your arm. It's not how hard you swing at the ball, but it's how well you time the transfer of your weight into the ball. So all this should be happening at the same time. The racket comes forward, the weight comes forward, and you meet the ball as you're moving forward, not after you've stepped forward. Now, when we transfer the weight, contact should be made at a point about even with the front foot. As you step in, the ball should be hit right there. Now, another problem that all players have, whether they're club players or professionals, is hitting the ball either too far away from the body or too close to the body. And if you hit the ball too close, you really don't see the ball as well. My father used to tell me when I was a little kid, I didn't know anything about physics, but he always said that if you see a truck in the distance, it doesn't appear to be moving very fast. And it's the same in tennis. Even though it's maybe a distance of 12 inches, you actually see the ball, it seems to be moving slower at a point out here than it is in here. You can see the ball clearer and better away from your body than in close. But then how far away from the body is the next question. The arm should never be completely straight. The elbow should be slightly bent, but a nice relaxed bend to the elbow, not tucked in. Again, we go back to golf and baseball, and we want to always think about keeping the head completely still. If your head stays down, your whole body stays down. If your head comes up, your whole body comes up. And that's when you lose control, is when you pull off of the ball. So if we can keep the head still, right at that point, if it's always looking at that point where we want to make contact, right there, and then just let the racket do the work. Now, one real big error that everyone makes is what do they do with the other hand? And I've improved my forehand considerably in the last few years by actually pointing to that spot where I think I should be hitting the ball every time. The final thing, which is very important on all strokes in tennis, but on the forehand, is the follow-through. Now, what do we do with the racket after the ball leaves the strings? It's a nice, easy, flowing stroke. The follow-through is across the body, not straight up, but the common fault that most players have is that they hit the ball and they stop the swing right there. The follow-through is what gives the ball direction and which carries the ball over the net. Now, I've found that to help my forehand, personally, I've tried to actually I'm right-handed, I bring my right shoulder under my chin. And it helped me to really hit right through the ball and a nice straight follow-through, right under the chin. It also keeps my head down. So now we'll go through the whole stroke one time. From the ready position with the knees slightly bent, I see the ball coming to my forehand, and I immediately start my preparation. Both hands are working. It's not just one hand, you see. It's very important if you're right-handed to use your left hand, and if you're left-handed to use your right hand. Helps the balance. Balance is very important. So we get prepared. The shoulders turn first, and the hips. Shoulders and the hips go together. I see the ball coming. My racket comes back to here. My feet turn sideways to the net, and then as the ball comes, I step forward and meet the ball at a position even with my front foot. And a nice, easy, flowing motion right through the ball, across the body, follow through high, and back to the ready position. If you can think about preparation, weight transfer, keeping the head down, making contact in front of the body, nice easy stroke, and a good follow-through, I think you'll find your forehand will improve tremendously. Once you feel comfortable with the basic techniques of the forehand and feel that you've mastered it and become a slightly advanced player, there's really three other ways you can think about hitting your forehand. And one is to hit it flat. Two is to put a little bit of topspin on the ball, which we see so much of today in the professional game. And three is to come under the ball, what's called underspin. On these three strokes, the flat forehand, the topspin forehand, and the underspin forehand, two things to think about. First, one is the grip stays the same. You don't have to try to use a different grip to hit topspin or underspin or flat. And two is that on all strokes in tennis, the wrist should always be firm. A lot of people, especially on topspin, think that the way they get topspin is to turn the arm over or break the wrist, and that's the wrong idea. The wrist should always be firm in tennis. Tennis is not squash, it's not racquetball, where you use a lot of wrist. The wrist is always firm. Now, to hit the ball flat, the ball is coming to me. The idea is to come straight through the ball on the same plane. Straight through it. The ball's at this plane, the racket comes from this plane, and they meet head on. The racket face is completely closed, and it comes straight through the ball. Now, if we remember the flat forehand, we came straight through the ball, and now from the same plane. But on topspin, the racket starts below the ball and comes up over it. It's called a sweeping motion, but we don't turn the wrist over and don't turn the arm over. Now, what topspin does, the ball turns over more. When it goes flat, it might not turn at all. But with topspin, it turns, and you'll see that the ball will go high over the net and then dip. Let you hit the ball hard but still keep the ball in the court. Now the third shot is underspin, which is used very rarely. And the idea is you start actually above the ball and the face of the racket is open, whereas on the flat shot, it was closed. We come under the ball, from behind it again, and the ball spins the other way. It spins this way, whereas with topspin, it spun the other way. You come under the ball, carries the ball deep, but the ball stays low. Recapping, in the flat forehand, we come straight through the ball, the head of the racket is closed. Topspin, the head is open, but it comes from below the ball, and you brush up over the ball, and the ball spins, and it gives you control. Underspin, the head is open again, but it comes from above the ball, and the ball spins, turns the other way, and that keeps the ball low. Topspin, the ball bounces high. Underspin, the ball bounces low.
Dick Stockton was certainly right when he mentioned that quick preparation is really one of the keys to a good forehand. Because if you let the ball bounce and make a swing like that, or a swing like that, neither one of them is going to be too good. So get the racket back as soon as the ball starts to bounce. Dick also mentioned, and I agree, that there's two ways that you can take the racket back for your backswing. One is known as the capital C arc, in which you take the racket in a sort of a loop like that, or a lot of coaches prefer for beginners to take it straight back. In either way, you eventually get the racket to there, and you follow with a low to high swing. It appears to me, as you improve your game and you're going to want more power to go with your control, that it's better to take a circular swing, because what it does is get your weight to the back foot, transfer to the front foot on the follow-through, making it a better shot. The forehand was always my bread and butter shot. Maybe it was because so many balls come down the center of the court and I like to get around and hit it. But the main thing is, if you're going to be an offensive tennis player, you've got to have a good control forehand. So practice hard. It'll really help your game. The backhand's actually an easier stroke to hit than the forehand. And the reason is that when you're hitting the backhand, why the turn here takes your swing away from the body. On the forehand, you sort of have a tendency to be cramped a little bit at coming across the body. Our instructor on the backhand, one of the best, Arthur Ashe.
Pick up a magazine at the newsstands these days, or any tennis instructional book, and you'll find pages and pages of the basics. And even us pros sometimes have to go back to the basics when things aren't going too well. What you're about to see now doesn't replace a lesson you might take from your own playing pro, but sooner or later, we'll all have to go back to the basics. So let's get into it right now. Starting with that grip of the forehand, when the hand and your wrist was literally behind the racket like this, in order to get the backhand grip, we have to move the hand now more on top of the racket, from the side to the top. And we start by putting the bottom part, fleshy part of the palm, literally on top of the racket at the base of the handle right here. Spread your fingers over as much of the handle as possible and have the V formed by your thumb and this first finger straddling the top left edge of the handle. And on the other side, the thumb, the base of the thumb, the tips of these four fingers. And the thumb rests between the middle finger and the forefinger. Until you are a competent player, you should continuously check your grip until it becomes second nature to you. Flipping it around in your hand until you can just get the backhand grip automatically. There are three parts to the backhand: the backswing, the follow-through, and the finish. The key to a successful backhand stroke is early preparation. And the first thing you want to do instantaneously when you see the ball coming to your backhand side is to bring the racket back with your left hand while pivoting on your left foot. Watch my heel and my left shoulder. Then we look at the distance the racket travels between the knee and the shoulder on the end of the backswing. No higher than the shoulder, no lower than the knee. Now there are two ways to get the racket back in this position. You can loop it like this, or you can bring it straight back like this. Either way, you want to use the left hand to guide you. The second part of the backhand is the follow-through. This is where most of you get in trouble. You first want to think about transferring your weight from the end of the backswing through the follow-through. The weight has to leave the left foot or the back foot and transfer the weight to the front foot. That's done during the follow-through. You have to meet the ball out in front of your right foot. Right there, because this is where the racket is parallel to the net. The racket head is pointing to the other side of the net when it's opposite the right foot. The third part of the follow-through is that you must keep the racket face completely open during the entire stroke. From the end of the backswing, just watch my racket now. Watch. The racket face is open, it's open, it's open, it's open, it's open. And when you finish the follow-through, it leads to the finish. Now, I separate the finish and the follow-through for one big reason. I want you to think of swinging through the ball, not at the ball. Swing through the ball. And when you do finish, the back of your hand is pointing toward the sky.
What I've just described to you is the basic underspin backhand. It's my bread and butter shot, as it is for most of the other players. And with this shot, you can float the ball deep back to your opponent's court with a minimum of effort. It's the easiest backhand to execute, and it's the most versatile. You can hit the ball anywhere in the court. Now, the flat backhand. Since flat means no spin, and it's virtually impossible to hit a ball like that, when you hear of flat strokes, what is meant are really strokes with very little spin. If you're going to hit a properly executed, perfectly flat shot, the ball must hit the strings of your racket at exactly 90 degrees, and it must continue on in that plane until the ball leaves the strings. Remember, shots hit with very little spin are hard to control. The critical element in trying to hit a topspin backhand is timing. And timing with the topspin backhand is very difficult, because whereas with the underspin backhand, the head of the racket is open throughout the entire stroke itself, with the topspin backhand, the head of the racket is closed. Generally, the idea in the back of your mind when executing a topspin backhand is that you want to throw the racket at the ball. You want to imagine in your head, at least, that the racket is loosely held in your hand and that you are slinging the racket at the ball. Most of the world's great topspin backhand players started with a low backswing. When they are at the end of their backswing, the head of the racket is usually below the waist, or at the most below the wrist. The path of the racket head is low to high, so that you can brush up against the ball opposite your right foot as you execute your follow-through. The follow-through has to be more pronounced than the follow-through on the underspin backhand. Try to make the follow-through as far forward as possible as opposed to straight up in the air. The ball tends to fall shorter in the court when you hit a topspin backhand. The more you follow through, the more distance you'll get.
Now let's talk about some of your common faults. By far, the most common fault you commit and I commit is late preparation. Now, what do I mean by late preparation? Or put another way, how many times have you heard your teacher say, your tennis pro say, get your racket back? What does get your racket back mean? Getting your racket back means one thing to you, but it means another thing to someone who's watching you. Tell me now when you watch me get my racket back if my racket's back. Is my racket back? No, it's not. My hand is back, but the racket isn't. Now my racket's back. This is the part of the racket that matters, the head of the racket. You can, one at the same time, have your hand back, but the racket won't be back. You must get the racket all the way back in the ready position. Most of you are afraid of your backhand. Admit it to yourself, aren't you? Now, what you do as a result of your fear is freeze up when you get to the area in the follow-through where you make contact with the ball, right here. You lock your elbow and you lock your wrist, and then you hit the ball when your weight's over the racket rather than when the ball is in front of you. You've got to unfreeze your elbow, unfreeze your wrist, let it flow so you meet the ball in front of you, out here, not here. Make contact out there. Most of you also bring your racket back in pieces rather than one piece like this. Isn't this what you do? That's what most of you do. Watch again. You bring it back to here, stop, then at the last minute, whip it through like that. You should be bringing it back in one continuous motion, like this. Another fault results from holding the racket too high in the ready position. The proper ready position is like this, with the racket parallel to the ground. Some of you sometimes cock the racket up a bit too high, so on your backswing, you bring it back too high, and the only way you can go from here is down. So you chop the ball. You correct that by making sure at the ready position, the racket is parallel to the ground. So when you bring it around with your left hand, the racket stays between the shoulder and the knee. Higher than the shoulder, you're going to chop the backhand. Because the backhand grip is a weaker grip, most of you, especially women, try to compensate by putting your thumb up the handle, like this. Now this grip feels stronger, no doubt about it. But the big drawback is when you use this grip to hit a backhand, you wind up with your elbow up in the air, and you wind up stabbing or pushing the ball like this. And you don't follow through. Now, to correct that, I suggest you wrap the finger, the thumb around the handle, spread the fingers on the handle like that, drop the elbow, keep the elbow down, and use your left hand and swing naturally, keeping the elbow down, meeting the ball in front of the right foot.
Well, that's the backhand. Now remember these two keys to a successful backhand. First, early preparation. Get that racket head back as soon as you see the ball coming. And secondly, remember to hit through the ball, not at the ball.
I was really pleased that Arthur Ashe, who truly had one of the great topspin backhands that I've ever seen, chose to emphasize, however, the importance of the underslice backhand. And of course, the reason he said that is that unless you've got a lot of time, a lot of good footwork, and a good follow-through, you're not going to produce too many good shots off the topspin. But taking that nice short backswing and coming under the ball, imparting underspin, you're going to keep the ball in play more, keep yourself in the match. That's important. You know, when people talk about new developments in tennis, I immediately think of the two-handed backhand because there's just more and more good players that seem to be using it. And the reason I think everybody uses it, they get good control, and of course they get that good natural topspin. And here to tell us about the two-handed backhand is Tom Gorman.
Some of the best players in the world use two-handed backhands. It hasn't been happening for very long, so there's been a lot of talk on the good points about it, the bad points about it. I think generally you'll find that the players that are using the two-handed backhand, among them Borg, Chris Everett Lloyd, Eddie Dibbs, Harold Solomon, Gene Mayer, when they all started, most of them used it because they weren't strong enough to hold it with one hand, so they used it for strength and power, where now it's developing as a shot for deception. The idea being that in a two-handed backhand, you can wait a little longer for the ball to come to you than on a one-handed backhand. Some of the more general mechanics about the two-handed backhand, starting with the grip, most of the players use an Eastern backhand, and then the left hand comes over just naturally. This enables a natural swing to be from very low up to very high. The footwork that's involved here is very important, and it also means that you have to have much quicker preparation because you don't have the reach. The top players that are playing in the game now take very small steps. And so when you're growing up or when you're starting to use it, you have to remember you have to be moving awfully well and get that preparation of the racket back very quickly. On the follow-through with a two-handed backhand, having your left arm and left hand on the racket means that your shoulder level will remain constant through the entire shot. The follow-through is not as long as it is on a one-handed backhand, which means that you're more readily prepared for the next shot. You can wait for the ball to come to you a little longer than normally if you're just hitting one-handed backhand. This enables you to wait, and it makes your opponent commit himself, which means that you can hold the ball on the racket a little longer Another advantage that you'll have as you hit the two-handed backhand is on the passing shot, because you not only get the natural topspin by virtue of dropping the racket head down lower than you do on a one-handed backhand, but you also get a lot of side spin because of the action of your left hand on the racket. And it also means that as a two-handed backhand player, you're going to be playing more to the side of the court than to the length of the court, which means you're going to try to take your opponent out wide, out farther even than the doubles alley, to get him out of the court, and then on the next shot, open up the entire court for the put-away shot. So now the most obvious question is, should I switch to a two-handed backhand? My first response, immediate response is, if you aren't going to actually go to a total two-handed backhand, use the left hand not only as a guide, but as a balance. I think that as you take the racket back, you can use your left hand on the throat and the frame, and as you hit the moment of impact, then let your hand go. But I believe that as you hit the ball, the left arm and the left hand is a very important and a very vital part of the backhand, whether it's a two-handed backhand or a one-handed backhand.
As Tom Gorman correctly pointed out, there certainly are a lot of plus and minuses for the two-handed backhand. One thing is for certain, it does give you an easy way of getting lift or topspin on your backhand shot. I know for sure there's a lot of fine young men and women out on the circuit using it and making a ton of money. So I would suggest for any of you who are having trouble with your one-handed backhand, give the two-hander a try. It might just be what you need. The smash is a shot that doesn't come into play too often, but when it does, it's usually very important. You've had a good approach shot or maybe a deep volley, and up comes a big, tall lob. You've got to have a smash to take care of this. And who's better to tell you about it but a fellow that has one of the great ones, Stan Smith.
We're going to talk about the overhead now, or what's commonly known between the players as the smash. I think the word smash describes the feeling that you want to have as you hit it, and the feeling that many of the spectators have when they see it hit. This stroke is really like the serve, but the motion is more compact, and it'll be a shortened swing motion. It's really an aggressive shot. This shot should be the shot that you hit to end a point. Your opponent shouldn't be getting it back. Now I'd like to talk about a few of the technical points about the smash. First of all, the grip. You want to use a grip which is just like your service grip, which is a continental grip. Now, most of you hit a forehand with this grip with a V between your thumb and your forefinger right on top of the grip. Well, for the continental grip, you want to move that V one turn to the left so that your hand is more on top of the racket, and you have a little bit more of your hand behind the racket as you're coming through to hit the serve. Okay, now the next thing about the smash is you want to get sideways as soon as you see the ball go up in the air. Now, the reason you want to do that is so that you can shuffle back in a much more comfortable position and get back quicker this way. In getting back quick, you realize that if you can get back, you can always go forward. But if you don't get back quickly, you're going to have trouble reaching for that ball that's over your head. Early preparation is really one of the first keys of the smash. You want to get the racket back as quickly as possible as soon as you see the ball going up as a lob. The next thing is, as you see the ball go up in the air, you want to get your arm in this cock position. Now, as you do that, you can use your free hand, or your left hand if you're right-handed, to focus on the ball. Some players even point at the ball. Now, as your right arm goes back in this cock position, your left arm will be up here to kind of counterbalance the weight of your right arm being back. The arms kind of work in opposite directions to help you keep the balance. You can also use this left arm to shade the sun from your eyes. Weight transfer is important for both power and accuracy in your smash. As you get your racket back in this cock position, you'll be shuffling back, so you want to get back as quick as possible to be able to step forward as you hit the ball. The ideal thing is to get back in time to be able to step forward like you would on your serve and transfer your weight to your forward foot. Or if you're hitting the ball, jumping forward, then you want to transfer your weight from the back part of your shoulder forward to the front part of the shoulder. The follow-through for the smash, as in the other strokes, is really vital to your accuracy and power. You want to follow through right in the direction you're trying to hit the ball, just like you would on your service motion. This will give you the opportunity to hit the ball where and when you want to. Normally you hit the smash right out of the air without letting it bounce, but sometimes you should let it bounce. First, if the ball is very high, the trajectory of the ball is going to be very steep as it comes down to you. So you should let the ball bounce, let it kick up, you'll have more time to hit the ball, and it won't be moving quite as fast in the air. Secondly, if the ball bounces or goes back very deep in the court, you probably won't be able to knock off the smash anyway. So you should get back, get behind the ball, take your time, and just try to hit the smash right down the center and try to get to the net and work up for the next shot. The third thing is, if it's very windy or if there's a lot of sun, then it's sometimes very difficult to focus on the ball if it's moving in the air. So you should let the ball bounce in that case, take your time, and then aim for your target. Now I'd like to talk about one of my mother's favorite shots. That's the high backhand smash. It's also my favorite shot, and I think it's because I was a little bit lazy and I didn't get around and hit those overhead smashes as well as I should have, and I took the balls over here on my backhand side. The keys to hitting a good backhand smash are, first of all, you want to get sideways just like you did on the other side. Get your racket back here in a very high position, and also get your weight back so that you can transfer your weight as you hit the ball so that your weight will be going forward, your arm will be going forward, and of course as you hit it, your wrist will be going forward. Now if you don't get sideways enough, the tendency is to hit the ball with an open position, or in other words, facing the net. In this position, it's very hard to get any power, and there's a tendency to slice the ball. Now one of the keys to helping you hit a good smash is you should have a target in your mind, a target of where you're trying to hit the ball. Try to aim for the T formed between with the service line and the center service line, in the middle of the court. In other words, if you're a little bit off to the right, you'll still be in the court, or you're a little bit off to the left or forward or back. Now another key that will help you with a smash is as you go back, think about turning the back of your left shoulder towards your opponent. This will force you to turn sideways. And from this position, all you have to do is make contact, and the turning of your body will give you the power that you need. Remember that you don't really have to hit the ball hard in the smash, but it's even more important to aim it in a position in which your opponent can't get to. In seeing players play tennis all around the world, these are the common faults I see with a smash. First of all, there's a fear of hitting the smash. Now this is the most important point because the only way to correct that is to hit as many smashes as possible. So get your buddy out there on the court and have him throw up a lot of lobs and get back and hit as many of those smashes as you possibly can, aiming for a target, and that will improve your smash very rapidly. One of the common faults is facing the net when they hit the smash. In other words, you're facing like this and hitting the smash like this. This way, you don't get any shoulder rotation or weight transfer into the shot. Therefore, you're going to have problems getting any power or any control. So in correcting this fault, make sure you turn sideways and also get your racket back in this position as soon as possible. Another fault is that you can overswing at the ball. A lot of players get so excited when they see that ball up there, they think it's so easy, and they want to kill it so badly that they take a big swing at the ball. And in doing that, they may have what we call in tennis a fresh air. And that's a little bit embarrassing because when you hit a fresh air, in other words, you don't make contact, a lot of times you fall on your seat of your pants, and if you're playing on grass, you get grass stains. Make sure you get your racket back in this position very quickly so you aren't taking a full swing as you're hitting the ball. The next thing is many people duck their head as they hit the smash, just like they do on the serve. They'll look like this. So the way to correct that fault is make sure you watch the ball, hit the racket, and don't think about where it's going, because you know where you're trying to hit it. But if you can make the ball hit that center of your racket, then you're not going to have any problems in consistency in hitting a good smash. The other thing is, as I mentioned before, you can get too eager when you see that ball up in the air. So try to take your time, be calm, make sure you think about getting in position, and then when the ball's in the right place, swing at it and put the ball away. It's really important you go out and practice that smash, because remember, when you hit that smash well, it's a winner.
I've always enjoyed seeing Stan Smith hit that high backhand overhead, and he's about the only fellow I could ever remember putting a placement away on it. But for you, I would think that when the ball's coming high to your backhand, think conservatively. Keep the ball in play. Don't miss it. Then, on the other hand, when a ball's very, very high, a deep lob, I don't think you're going to put too many of them away if you're behind the baseline on the bounce. I would let it bounce and play it carefully. The same thing goes if the ball's coming straight down on your head. You're just not going to put many of those away. But finally, when you've worked hard, you got your opponent out of position, and you're in there for the kill, really move in and take care of it, Stan Smith style.